Hey guys, Caleb here with DSLR Video Shooter, and this is what I'm calling the ultimate run and gun FX3 cinema build, if you will. While it might look really hairy, it is incredibly easy to break down this rig, transform it from a huge handheld setup down to something much more manageable. It has a brand new V-mount battery system that is available at Foundry, allowing you to convert an FX3 or really any camera from more of a mirrorless compact setup up to something much beefier with a ton of runtime. It has multiple power outputs, a modified top handle audio setup, a monitor system that can be removed quickly, and the whole thing can be dropped in a bag or broken down super quickly. And in this video, I'm going to show you how the whole thing works, all the components used, as well as some other little gems like this bungee quick release strap setup, which I'm super excited about. But first, a quick disclaimer. None of the gear companies seen in this video have sponsored this video. It is, however, supported by those of you who have purchased camera guides, LUTs, or the gear I've come up with over at camerafoundry.com. You can also support the channel by purchasing one of my small rig batteries available in the description. All right, so before we jump over to the bench, I want to quickly show you one of the coolest party tricks on this rig. And actually have DJ over here on camera too, to give us a better angle of what we got going on here. So we have a matte box here, not necessary, but we'll talk about that here in a second. And I actually have a cart right in front of me. I'm gonna, in real time, break this whole rig down because in my opinion, a run and gun setup is only as good as how quickly you can get it up and running or tear it back down when you have to move quickly. So the strap, we'll talk about later, just 2 pushes of 2 buttons, that disconnects. We're gonna remove our monitor setup, HDMI cable, power, and I'll loosen that. Whole thing comes off. If you don't need it, you don't need it. Now we've got something a lot more compact. I think the setup is really, really fantastic and great for handheld use. We're using a Sony zoom lens because, again, run and gun, that's kind of the name of the game there. We've got the XLR top handle for the FX3, which can be removed by simply loosening 2 screws. And we'll talk about, again, this awesome cage system here from Small Rig in a little bit. So there's the handle. Now we're down to just the camera lens and CineBack Lite, which is going to be a huge part of this rig and what's super exciting about this. It's a super compact cinema-like body. So it kind of takes the FX3, builds it up a little bit, gives you a lot of power options. But if I unplug this USB-C power delivery cable, so we're actually using that instead of a dummy battery, I can now simply remove the camera, and that's what's so awesome about this rig setup. A quick release system that allows us to instantly bump the camera up with a lot of juice, a lot of power, great for handheld, or if you need to throw it on a gimbal, you just put this thing in your bag, and now you're back down to a super tiny little mirrorless setup. Let's head over to the bench, talk about each of the components, how to put this thing together, and all of that fun stuff. For the camera, I've gone with the Sony FX3, but of course you could go with really anything here, as we'll see later. But this camera is obviously fantastic, and that XLR top handle is super handy for run and gun situations. Cage-wise, I've gone with the Small Rig FX3 Hawk Lock quick release camera cage. I just love this closed handle design, and I don't have it installed here, but it also comes with a hand strap, which is slick. For run and gun setups, I love a good solid normal zoom. So we're using the 24-70 G Master from Sony. This is not the newest version, but it works fantastically, and I just love this lens. Now let's get into the base plate setup. So for this, we're using a Small Rig base plate. That's going to allow us to mount CineBack Lite, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And we're also going to be using the Falcam F38 quick release system, which is going to be awesome to be able to quickly remove the camera from the whole setup. We're going to take the quick release plate and attach it to the bottom of our camera rig, and then the base of the F38 can be installed onto that 15mm rod base plate. Then we have the meat and potatoes of this rig, CineBack Lite. This thing adds a V-mount battery plate to your camera with multiple power outputs and a place to safely store your camera screen when not in use. It also has a power switch on the top to be able to toggle power on and off for the entire setup, a cheese plate for adding other accessories, and is universal, so you can use this with any camera. For the battery, I'm keeping things simple with the Small Rig 99 Pro. This is just a solid, strong battery with good performance. To mount CineBack Lite to our base plate, we're going to use 2 rods. Now you could go with something longer that'll reach your lens, but I'm just going to stick with 2 short 4-inch rods. Now we can add the 2 rods to CineBack Lite, followed by the camera, and I just love how this thing instantly locks in place. You close the screen into the screen holder of CineBack, and just like that, we have a small cinema camera, which is so fun. We can throw our battery on there and things are looking pretty nice. Next, we have a matte box. Now this is completely optional. But Condor Blue asked if I wanted to check out their new matte box. It has some pretty slick features. The first is the magnetic eyebrow, which is such a nice feature to keep that completely sealed when you're not using it. It has multiple trays that you can bolt on and really nice mechanisms for getting the filters in and out, as well as other stuff like an easy to remove eyebrow flag. I love the center mark line and how well it fits onto rings, and the little bubble level is so handy for getting the matte box centered and level. To power the camera, I'm using one of the camera Foundry right angle to right angle USB-C cables, running it through the rig and connecting the camera to one of the two 65-watt ports on CineBack Lite. Next up, we have a monitor, and for this I'm going with the original Shinobi because it's super lightweight. It feels like there's no monitor there at all. On the bottom, I've bolted on a small rig NATO rail, and I'm using a small rig NATO to NATO arm. I don't know if they make this anymore, but there are several similar arms out there. To power things, I'm going to be using the Adamus power adapter and a D-tap to barrel connector. This whole setup is just going to slide right onto the top NATO rail of the XLR top handle, and I can plug in the D-tap into CineBack Lite to get that all powered up. To connect the monitor to the camera, I'm using the Condor right angle HDMI cables, which are just the best. Next, let's dive into the Mutiny quick release strap system. In short, these two little bars with a receiver are going to be bolted onto the camera cage. They also come in this red variety with a center mount, but I'd recommend the black side mount. And Mutiny also sells a strap with these two receivers, and there's also other options on Amazon that I found with the same receiver. This particular one has a bungee built into it, which is so handy for filming. You can remove the D rings with the receiver on them, and these connectors simply press and lock into these Mutiny receivers. So I bolted that onto either side of the camera cage, and with that done, I can now add the strap, which just presses right in. It's so fast, so convenient. So you can leave the strap on your person and then just simply take the camera off as needed. The bungees are super fun on this thing to keep things nice and steady. And then when you're done with the strap, you can just leave it on your body and disconnect it from the camera. Now we can get into our audio setup, which is going to be a modified XLR top handle. Now this is going to work with the K3M as well as this XLR H1 from Sony. In short, Camera Foundry sells this little adapter that allows you to add a cold shoe or really anything to the top of the unit while also using the microphone holder off to one side. Installation is super easy. You open up the microphone holder using a J0 Phillips head screwdriver bit, like the iFixit screwdriver set. We're gonna remove the two screws that hold the microphone holder in place. With that done, you can remove the entire holder and install this little adapter using the same two screws. Once you have the screws back in place, and of course you don't wanna over tighten here, we can add a cold shoe mount. I love this one from Nitsy because it has two screws to hold it in place so there's no twisting. And then we can add the microphone holder back using the two included screws. With that done, we have a cold shoe mount with a couple extra threads still and our microphone holder off to the side. This means we can add a microphone like the one that comes with the camera, as well as an audio receiver. For me, that's going to be the Rode Wireless Pro. And here's the final setup for audio. Two microphone inputs, all in a nice tidy package. Once everything's together, this is what things are looking like. And it looks like a handful, but what's awesome is all of these components are easily removable, customizable, and you can break the whole thing down very quickly or just take the entire setup and put it in a bag. Here's another look at the setup without the matte box, and you can see me breaking it down to an even smaller setup by removing CineBack Lite. And when we need more power, we just pop the camera back on, plug it in, and we're good to go. So that's been an overview of what I consider kind of the end game mirrorless run and gun setup. And what I love about this, and I'm sure there's going to be comments, is that you can strip it down to something really small or build it up. Because I'm sure someone or many people in the comments are going to be like, why don't you just buy an FX6? Well, an FX6 will always be an FX6. Whereas with this, you unplug a USB cable and now you're torn down to something much, much smaller. You can go on the subway, on a bus, film, in small, tight places, tear the whole thing down for flight, whatever you got to do. Or you can build it up have a ton of runtime with a V-mount battery system that you can very quickly swap out and use different batteries. Again, you can find all of the gear mentioned in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you in the next video.